Imagine waking up to a world where the president of a sovereign nation is physically captured by a foreign military. Not in a movie, not in a Tom Clancy novel, but in reality. This happened just a few days ago in Venezuela. The US military has detained Nicolas Maduro, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. While the world is distracted by the chaos in Caracas, a silent economic bomb is ticking, and this one is aimed directly at New Delhi. There is a bill sitting in the US Senate right now, greenlit by President Trump, that proposes a staggering 500% tariff on countries that continue to buy Russian oil. Yes, you heard that right, 500%. For the last 2 years, India managed to balance the West and Russia. We bought discounted oil, we saved billions, and we kept our inflation in check. But now, in January 2026, the game has changed completely. The rules of the global order are being rewritten overnight. If the US can forcefully change a regime in South America to control oil and threaten its strategic partner India with economic warfare, the big question is the era of India's strategic autonomy over? And what did External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar say in Europe just yesterday that hints at a massive shift in India's policy? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, I will tell you about a specific Plan B that India has activated, something that might just save our economy from this 500% shock. This is a story you cannot afford to miss. To understand the pressure on India, we first have to understand what just happened in Venezuela. On January 3, 2026, the world witnessed an event that geopolitical experts are calling a symptom of a G0 world, a world with no leadership, just raw power. The US military executed a raid in Caracas, effectively removing Nicolas Maduro from power. Now, the official US stance is that this was necessary to restore democracy and fight narco-terrorism. But let's look at the timing. Donald Trump is back in the White House. His policy is America first, but many are now calling it America alone. Why Venezuela? Why now? You have to look at the oil markets. Venezuela sits on the largest proven oil reserves in the world, even more than Saudi Arabia. But for years, their production has been pathetic, barely 800,000 barrels a day. By taking control, or as Trump says, running Venezuela, the US aims to flood the market with oil. But here's the catch. This isn't just about cheap gas for Americans. It is about destroying the leverage of Russia and Iran. If Venezuelan oil floods the market, oil prices crash. Who hurts the most? Russia. And this brings us to the second, more dangerous part of the strategy. The US doesn't just want to lower prices, they want to physically stop countries like India and China from funding Putin's war machine. This is where the story shifts from Caracas to New Delhi. Now you might ask, how does a coup in Venezuela affect the petrol price in Mumbai? Here's the link. President Trump has reportedly given the green light to a bipartisan bill that allows the US to levy tariffs of up to 500% on countries that knowingly purchase Russian oil. Let's pause and let that sink in. 500%. If this bill passes, and reports say a vote could happen as early as next week, it would mean that if an Indian company imports Russian crude, the US could slap a 500% tax on Indian goods entering the US to compensate, or worse, sanction the entities involved. Already we are seeing the impact. Just 48 hours ago, reports confirmed that India's imports of Russian oil have dropped significantly. In November 2025, Russia accounted for nearly 34% of our oil. Today, it has dropped below 25% and falling fast. Why? Because Indian refiners like Reliance, HPCL and MRPL are smart. They see the writing on the wall. They have paused imports from sanctioned Russian entities. They know that this time the US threat isn't just rhetoric, it is real. But this creates a massive problem for us. We are a crude importing nation. 85% of our oil comes from outside. If we stop buying cheap Russian oil, we have to buy expensive Middle Eastern or American oil. That means our import bill goes up by billions of dollars. That means inflation. That means the rupee weakens. This is exactly why Dr. S. Jaishankar is currently in Europe. While the US is tightening the screws, India is looking for friends who still believe in a rules-based order. Yesterday in France, Dr. S. Jaishankar made a very significant statement. He said, India and Europe can bring stability into the global economy. He met with the French foreign minister and leaders in Poland. Now listen to what the Polish foreign minister said. This is crucial. He said, "I expressed my satisfaction that India has reduced Russian oil imports because this is fueling Putin's war machine." This is a diplomatic bombshell. For 2 years, India stood firm. We said Europe buys more oil in an afternoon than we do in a month. We defended our purchase of Russian oil aggressively. But now, Poland is satisfied that we are reducing it. This confirms that behind closed doors, a recalibration is happening. India is slowly, quietly pivoting away from Russian dependence. Not because we want to abandon Russia, but because the cost of doing business with Russia is becoming too high under the Trump 2.0 administration. The US strategy is clear. You are either with us or you pay a 500% tariff. And for a country like India, which exports IT services, pharmaceuticals and textiles to the US, a trade war with America is a nightmare scenario. I want to bring in a concept here that Ian Bremmer, the president of Eurasia Group, discussed recently. He calls this the G0 world. G7 is the group of wealthy nations. G20 is the larger group. G0 means no one is driving the bus. The US is no longer the global policeman who protects the seas and free trade. The US is now acting like a global warlord, using its economic and military might solely for its own short-term gain. The raid in Venezuela wasn't about international law, it was a power move. The tariff threat on India isn't about fair trade, it is coercion. Ian Bremmer noted that while this Venezuela operation is a tactical win for Trump, it undermines the US's long-term standing. But here's the scary part, no one is stopping them. China hasn't done anything, Russia hasn't done anything, Europe is silent. This sends a signal to New Delhi. We are on our own. If the US decides to squeeze our economy to hurt China or Russia, there is no international code that can save us. We have to save ourselves. So what is the solution? What is India doing? Remember I told you in the beginning about a plan B? Here it is. First, diversification to the US. Data shows that India's crude oil imports from the US rose by 92% in the first 8 months of this financial year. We are swapping Russian dependence for American dependence. It sounds risky, but it buys us political safety. If we buy their oil, they can't sanction us easily. Second, the European pivot. Dr. S. Jaishankar is in Europe not just for tea. He is cementing a trade and technology alliance. If the US becomes hostile with tariffs, Europe becomes our primary market for stability. Third, strategic reserves. We are expanding our strategic petroleum reserves. We currently have a 9-day cover, but the government is accelerating phase 2 storage at Chandikhol and Padur. We are preparing for a supply shock. Fourth, the rupee strategy. RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das just said Atmanirbharta is not isolationist. India is building a domestic fortress. We are reducing external vulnerabilities so that when these geopolitical winds blow, our house doesn't fall down. To conclude, the next 6 months are going to be incredibly volatile. The 500% tariff bill is a sword hanging over our heads. The events in Venezuela show that the US is in a mood to break things. India's strategy is currently wait and watch, combined with quiet compliance. We are reducing Russian oil to keep the Americans happy while aggressively building our own defenses. The question you need to ask yourself is, in a world where rules no longer matter and only power speaks, is India moving fast enough to become a true superpower, or are we still just reacting to the moves of others? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Is the US right to pressure India, or should we stand our ground, even if it means tariffs? Thank you for watching.